up, man? First off, early Merry Christmas to you. I know you're up there visiting your parents, but how was the travel up to Vermont and how you doing?
Good. Nice to see you, Sam. Yeah, the travel was pretty good, pretty seamless. I tried to travel several days in advance before the holidays. I know sometimes traveling, there's kind of flight delays and all of that. So I thought it'd be nice to get up to New England. I grew up in this Burlington, Vermont area, so known to get some weather around this time of year. So
Sure.
I've had my fair share of holiday visits with flight delays. I remember one year. I got stuck in the Newark airport for 7 hours overnight. So this
Oh
year I
my
didn't want to deal with
goodness.
all that. So I decided to come a little bit early and, spend the weekend here and be able to see the family. And it's actually started snowing out right now. So it's
Oh,
pretty nice
beautiful,
here.
man. I mean, I live in South Carolina. We maybe get one day of snow a year. Last year we got no snow a year, no snow. The year before that we got a little bit. With you traveling, and this is an interesting topic to kind of hit on at the beginning. Do you do anything differently in your like daily routine prior to a day of travel?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I'm definitely, I would say, a healthy traveler. So, when I travel, I do some things a little bit maybe different from my standard routine. And then on the flip side, I try to keep a lot of my daily routine in while I travel. So, like a lot of people are into their health and, health conscious, you might take some supplements on a regular basis. So for
Hmm?
me, when I know I'm going to be traveling a lot, I'll try to load up on things like immune system stuff that's kind of good for that. Try to get like a nice little workout in the day before and then even the day of the flight if it's not too early, just to kind of get some movement. And then same thing when I land, it's nice to be able to, if not the day you land, but within 24 hours, try to get some movement in.
Yep.
Keep the body moving, keep the blood flow, get some fresh air, all the things you're normally used to doing. Because, when you're traveling, you're exposed to a ton of different germs. You're in a tiny metal tube in the air. You're in airports, people touching all kinds of stuff. So you definitely want to keep your immune system high.
Yeah, totally. I've heard if you can get off the plane and almost head directly to the gym, it's like one of
Yep.
the most beneficial things for you to do on a travel day. It's really interesting. We're going to get into everything you're doing now, right? With healthy
Yep.
habits and just helping people get motivated and get on the right track to, live a healthier life. But I'm interested to know how, when you started doing this, I've read or I've listened to you a little bit and, from your social media and some of your posts. And this wasn't always something you did. It was take me back to your early, mid, late 20s when, you were running and gunning and then things you started having some issues and you started to
Yeah.
figure out maybe I need to pay more attention to my health. Like take me through how you recognized some of that stuff in your own life and then how you started to transform it early on in I think your late 20s, you said.
Yeah, so in my 20s, I was kind of living, the dream, so to speak. So, I moved from early in my 20s, I moved from New England out to Colorado and was chasing the dream of snowboarding every day and beautiful weather and all of that, which it is. It's Colorado definitely has all those things, but with that comes a specific lifestyle. And so, there's this snowboarding culture that very much embraces partying and beer and all these things, which can be a lot of fun and après ski. But it's easy in your 20s to kind of let that sort of take over your life.
Mhm.
And so, while you're enjoying the outdoors, you then enjoy the nightlife as well. And so, Colorado absolutely has a really fun, youthful culture, which is great. But, I found myself drinking lots of beer, maybe eating some junk food after a day on the mountain and, really just not putting my nutrition first. I was really doing all the outdoor activities already, but I wasn't really putting the nutrition first.
Mhm.
And the older you get, you start to realize you kind of need both of those things. It
Yeah.
can't just be the activities or just the nutrition. You kind of need
Hmm.
both that physical movement and the nutrition piece. So that's kind of how it all started. And then, I started hitting a point, I think I was maybe 28, where all of a sudden beer just wasn't sitting so well in my stomach.
Yep.
If you're older than 28, you probably have hit this point as well. For anyone listening, if you're in your 30s, 40s, 50s, whatever, I'm sure you've all hit a point where you just wake up a day after one too many beers or too much junk food, and you're just like, man, my stomach feels terrible. And it kind of ruins your day, right? So
Totally.
for me, after enough of those weekends in a row, waking up with a stomach that just felt terrible, I knew I had to make a change. And so for me, that was kind of like the eye-opening moment. I didn't really want to miss out, but I started making some small changes. And so I had some people in my life that kind of got me into swapping beer for tequila. So something a little bit cleaner, which is kind of nice. And then now I'm the type of person will even add electrolytes in my tequila soda or tequila water, something like that.
Nice.
But yeah, they're small, kind of making some of those small changes and kind of figured things out over time. And then slowly started dialing in nutrition as well.
Hmm.
So, I started experimenting with keto, and I was keto for probably close to 2 years. And I went sort of full send on that keto path for a while, to the point where I'll admit I was a little bit too preachy about it. But it helped me learn a lot about
Nice.
myself and just
Yeah.
about eliminating certain things out of your diet. So eliminating processed foods, eliminating sugar, all those things. Then when you bring those things back in, you can kind of start realizing how much they affect you.
Hmm.
So I experimented with that for a few years and then slowly got into carnivore, which is sort of a natural progression for people who experiment with keto. They're like, okay, now, what else can I experiment with? Can I
Yeah.
eliminate more things? And so I went full carnivore a couple different times,
Nice. I've tried that
for
as well.
maybe a few months at a time, not too long, but carnivore basically full meat. All I ate was red meat for and eggs, for maybe 2 months at a time here and there, kind of throughout the year. So I kind of dabbled back and forth with that for a while. So that was kind of the beginning of the journey. And while I was doing that, I was listening to a ton of podcasts about nutrition and health. And, as you age, the more important it is to build muscle and eat more protein and, learning all the negative effects that some of this junk food has on you beyond just feeling bad. There's
Hmm.
cognitive effects. It can affect your brain long term, give you
Yeah.
dementia, give you diabetes, all these things. So I started going down this crazy rabbit hole of all these things.
Yeah, totally. And
Yeah,
really, like I think movement, yeah, right. Movement and nutrition have to they go together. And, depending on who you are, there might be the one that comes first. If you're moving, sometimes it'll make you want to eat better. If you're eating better, sometimes it's going to make you want to move better. But yeah, you're
yep,
right. As you get older, I think if your diet is off, you're going to feel it internally all the time, which is insane because some people don't even know what feeling good feels like just because
exactly.
they're
Yeah.
constantly inflamed. They're constantly, having glucose spikes. They're, constantly getting bad sleep. They don't even know what feeling good feels
Hmm.
like. Were you already dialing in your routine at this moment, like figuring out your routine and habits to kind of get on this healthy lifestyle?
Yes and no. So back when I kind of first started experimenting with this, I was working in an office. This was way back, maybe 2016, 2017. I was working in an office. And so, like a lot of people, you try to scramble to make breakfast in the morning and it's
Hmm.
kind of a mad rush. And then you have to go sit in traffic. Then you're at an office all day and you either have to bring lunch if you're packing something healthy or find something near your office to go, and then cook dinner at night. And so that's really tough. And there's a lot of people who are working in offices today, who still have to deal with that. And that presents a whole new challenge. What really made the difference for me is when I moved into a fully remote position, in, I think it was 2017. So I've been remote for a lot longer than, pre-pandemic, all that stuff.
Sure.
But for me, that's really when everything kind of changed because then all of a sudden I had the time to start experimenting with cooking healthier meals, making more time, to cook healthier meals because I wasn't sitting in an hour of traffic each way every day. And I started making more time for myself, and starting having a better routine. So for me,
Hmm.
that was the biggest, I guess, change in, or I guess pivotal moment in my life is when I was able to work from home and start, I guess, creating more of a routine rather than
Sure.
just sitting in traffic because that was the routine before. But before that, even when I was in an office, when I was initially started to think, okay, maybe I should incorporate some healthier foods. I remember, way back then, trying to make a green smoothie every morning. And at the time, I didn't know much about nutrition, and I thought, green smoothies were this golden ticket to
Sure.
to health. I've learned a lot since then, and I've realized that's not necessarily
It
the
might
case.
not be that way. Yeah.
But yeah, back then, so I'd take my super greens and all these things, and I would dump them in a huge smoothie and just have tons and tons of like spinach and fiber, like fiber overload. But I had all this stuff in a green smoothie, and I would just chug that in the car, sitting in traffic every morning. And that was, I guess, the initial sort of gateway into this kind of whole journey and kind of creating a routine.
Yeah.
Um,
When
yeah.
did you decide you wanted to start helping and working with others?
That's a great question. I think just in more recent years, candidly, just in the last maybe 2, 3 years, as I have entered into my late 30s officially now, I don't know when that actually starts, but now that I'm in my late 30s, I feel like I've hit a point where, a lot of people are getting older and they're starting to feel worse. Friends my age, they're starting to maybe not feel as good as they used to. And so I've
Hmm.
had friends kind of slowly reach out and say, "Hey, you're in pretty good shape, seemingly. You look like you haven't really aged much in the last 10 years."
It's a
And so
great
for me,
compliment.
that's actually great to hear. Obviously I love the compliment there, but I think
And
having
it's
some
good.
friends kind of just individually reach out and say, like, what's your secret?
Hmm.
What are you doing? Is obviously very flattering, but also inspiring. And it makes me want to help my friends, and then realizing that there's probably lots and lots of other people out there as well that are wondering, what can I do? Because maybe things came naturally, or maybe someone was just kind of naturally fit or had a naturally good physique or, good metabolism growing up. And then you hit a certain point in life where your body starts slowing down a little bit. So you have to
Hmm.
put a lot of extra effort into it. And so for me, it's just in the last couple of years, one-off friends reaching out, kind of asking for tips and advice on stuff. What are you eating? What's your workout routine? What are all these different things that you're doing to, stay young and active and healthy? So yeah, that's kind of how it all began. Is a slow, I guess, like a slow drip, if
Hmm.
you will.
Yeah, and it's also rewarding too once like people ask you and you start giving them pretty good advice or advice, they follow it and then they come back to you like, man, that really helped out. Like, and it's like probably
Yep.
pretty basic tips too to kind of get start them on the right track. What was when people do reach out to you, what are some of the most immediate things that you can kind of tell they can switch up in their life?
Yeah, I think there's a few things that I'll tell people that can make the biggest difference or biggest impact on you that are pretty low effort. The first thing is, nutrition is huge.
Hmm.
And so a lot of people will jump straight into a nutrition plan or meal prepping or something like that. And that's great. But until you actually cut out certain things that are really negatively affecting you, those other pieces are going to be a lot more difficult. So, what I would recommend to people is cut out the things that can make you feel tired. Cut out the things that are going to affect your digestion. So, things
You
like
talk about
processed sugars.
nutrition. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So when it comes to nutrition, like cut out processed sugars, cut out processed carbohydrates, cut out fried food. That's a
Hmm.
big one, especially in America. We have so much fried food everywhere, cooked in seed oils. I could go on a whole tangent about
We're
seed
going to talk
oils,
about
but
seed oils. Yeah.
but yeah, I think when you can just start cutting out those things, you're just going to start feeling better. A lot of people drink soda every day, and that
Hmm.
can have huge effects on how you feel every day and give you these huge sugar rushes and then just tired in the afternoon. So that's one thing I would tell people up front is just start cutting out all these cravings that you have.
Hmm. Can you walk through like what are some of those foods? Like when you say processed carbs, people might not know what that is.
Sure.
Like talk through some of those actual foods so they might be able to recognize it.
Yeah, absolutely. So for example, there's all kinds of carbohydrates, right? So when you think of carbs, you think of pasta and bread.
Hmm.
Um, on the flip side, fruit is carbs,
Hmm.
potatoes, rice, those are all carbs. So when you think of processed carbs, it's think about things that are made in a factory. So bread, you know, pastries that you get at Starbucks, anything like pancakes, waffles, all the super delicious tasting stuff that, comes in a box or a package that's
Hmm.
not like grown from the earth. So if it's grown from the earth, and it's still a carb, it's probably okay for the most part. Loosely with I guess take it with a grain of salt. But yeah, so I would say try to avoid those types of things that come in a box or a package,
Yep.
that are kind of very starch densey, kind of filling foods. And maybe
They make
replace
you
them
feel
with
so
something like,
bad.
what's that?
They make you feel so bad too.
Oh yeah. I mean, they taste great, but they make you feel bad because, a slew of reasons, but, made in a factory, a lot of them are filled with chemicals,
Hmm.
highly processed, filled with things like glyphosate and all kinds of pesticides, and the list goes on. Um, but yeah, if you can take those things out, then your digestion is going to dramatically improve.
Hmm. With with a lot of what you're doing now, and you made a great point before we started recording, people try and jump in and do all this at once. But if they don't have like some of those basic life habits in order, they're going to have a higher percentage of failing when they're trying to do it all at once, right? With New Year's Eve
Right.
coming around, people are trying to have all of these resolutions and get healthier. Like, for your point of view, for an individual to succeed when they're trying to transform their life, like, what are some of the first things they can do outside of maybe saying cut out some of food, but maybe like some habits or routine type things that they can do to kind of get their day started or do throughout their day?
Yeah, absolutely. So, in addition to kind of cutting out cravings, there's a lot of things you can do every single day. And I think the key is to set yourself up for success, is make it easy on yourself. So, one thing could be walking. Something as simple as walking every day, twice a day, can have huge, huge benefits. So, it can help you sleep better. It can help cognitive function. So, before you go into work every day, if you're working from home, before you just sit in front of a computer looking at the
Hmm.
screen all day, getting some movement in and kind of walking around, either taking a lap around the neighborhood, or if you don't kind of live in a neighborhood, running up and down the stairs, doing some kind of movement first thing in the morning when you first wake up can help get your blood flowing, and then it's going to help your brain work better. It's going to help your digestion get started. So when you eat throughout the day, you're going to start digesting better. So things aren't
Hmm.
just going to sit there. You're going to feel better. And then walking at the end of the day can have kind of same effects as well. And then it can actually help calm you down. So if you've
Yep.
been staring at a screen all day, if you walk at the end of the day, it's going to help your body, your mind relax. Again, help with digestion, help improve your sleep. So something as simple as walking a few times a day for even just 10 or 15 minutes at a time can
Hmm.
have huge improvements. And so if someone can start doing that every single day, then they're probably going to start noticing huge benefits. The other thing is sleep. So a lot of people don't really prioritize sleep in the way that they should. And everyone has different schedules. If you have children, it can be hard. They might be getting up in the middle of the night and stuff like that. But I think it's really important to prioritize having a pretty regular sleep schedule,
Hmm.
and trying to get, as much sleep as your body needs. We all kind of require different amounts, and some people can function on 5, 6 hours of sleep. But some people need 8 or 9 to
Yeah.
feel like they're fully awake. But yeah, I think really prioritizing getting a regular, consistent sleep pattern.
Do you have a pretty strict sleep routine for yourself?
Um, I wouldn't say super strict, but there's a couple things that, I try to keep consistent.
Hmm.
I try to go to sleep within a similar window, about an hour window, between 10 and 11 every night for me. I don't wake up as early as some, so for me, if I go to bed between 10 and 11, I wake up around 7-ish. I'm getting 8 hours of sleep. That works great for me.
Yep.
The other thing I try to do is, I try to not eat 2 hours before I go to
I was
sleep.
going to say,
So
when
want
do
to give
you
your
eat?
food time to digest and all of
Hmm.
that. So I definitely try to, stop eating dinner at least 2 hours before I go to sleep, so I have time to
Yep.
digest. Um, Another thing I recently started doing in the last couple months is trying to leave my phone as far away from me as
Hmm.
possible. It can be hard, we're all used to scrolling TikTok or Instagram at
I,
night
s-
and all that
I saw a
stuff.
funny meme recently. It's like you're scrolling because you can't go to sleep, but you're also like scrolling
Yep.
because you're awake or something like that. It's just like you're just
Yeah,
constantly
exactly.
scrolling.
It's hard. It's a hard habit to do. And, there's so many, you see on Amazon, there's all these products now where you can have like your phone on a charger next to your bed, and it can double serve as an alarm clock. But then there's like the light, the residual light from the phone and all that. So
Yep.
I just try to, if I need to set an alarm, I'll set one and just try to leave it as far away from the bed as possible where I can still hear the alarm. So that's kind of another thing. I try to keep those things pretty consistent. And then when I'm traveling, there's a couple things I try to do. So um, if I land kind of later in the day or at night, you get a lot of people probably take their shoes off on the plane, your feet swell up. So you get a lot of inflammation when you're
Hmm.
traveling. And so what I do when I travel is I try to actually, move my pillows and then put my feet up on the headboard
Nice.
for like 10 minutes. And that can actually help reduce the inflammation in your feet and get a lot of the
Hmm.
blood flow to your brain, which can actually help you fall asleep. So small
Yep.
things like that can really be helpful, not just when you're traveling, but yeah,
Yeah,
that's
that's a
great.
great
Kind
tip.
of a great way to help you fall asleep if you're not super tired. You'll notice if you kind of lay there without scrolling on your phone and just kind of be in your thoughts and look at the ceiling, um, might help you kind of get a little bit more tired and doze off.
Totally. I think, gosh, me and my wife, we always say that we get off a plane, you feel like your shoes are smaller because your feet
Yeah,
are so swollen and your like
so
socks
swollen.
are
Yeah.
tighter and all that sort of stuff with habits. And again, it's probably hard for somebody that maybe is starting from zero to go to 100 right away. And in a sense, I think it might be even better like for them to start stacking habits. They start with one thing, maybe the next
Yep.
week start another thing. But when you're working with people, how do you strategize around that? And then how do you help them kind of maybe start with one thing, start with two things, and then how do they continue to stack those habits in their life?
Yeah. So that's a great question. I think a good way to think about it is for anyone who has a pet or a dog or maybe has raised a child, you can't teach them everything at once. And so it's the same thing for habits. So if you're trying to learn something new, you want to learn that one thing and then really kind of master it before you learn the next thing, and then the next thing, and then the next thing. So if you try to teach a dog three tricks when they're just a puppy, they're not going to be able to do all those things at once. And so get them to learn that one thing first and get them good at it so they truly understand it. And then it's just like natural for them. The same thing with building habits. So a lot of people will try to say, hey, I'm going to do this 60-day or 30-day challenge. But most of those people fail at that because they don't have the basics. They haven't trained their mind to understand those basic habits. And so for me, my approach is to basically learn that one thing and do it every single day to the point where it kind of feels annoying. But then when you stop doing it, you're like, oh, hey, why am I not doing that thing anymore?
Yep.
So, if you start walking every single day, twice a day, the first couple days it might suck. And you might be like, man, it's cold out, it's winter, it's dark out at 4. I don't want to go for a walk. But if you do that every day for a week, 2 weeks, when you stop doing it, all of a sudden you're going to feel lost without it.
Sure.
And so that's how you build habits is make it feel like it's just part of your day, everything you do, until the point when you take it away, you start craving that thing.
Yep.
And so that's the key for me is building those healthy habits every single day. And then once you have that one habit where it feels like you need it, then you add something else in.
Hmm.
Then you add something else in. So I think taking more of a slower approach uh, and a calculated approach to kind of dialing on each of those things one at a time is much more successful than trying to do everything all at once.
Totally. Like you said, it'll help people be more sustainable in other things they're trying to achieve. What are some of the healthy habits that you recommend to people that might be not be like on top of mind for everybody? Because people might think about walking or trying to eat better or something. But what are some like random kind of off things that you've learned in your experience that really can help people throughout their life?
Yeah, great question. Another one is that's challenging that a lot of people might not think about is getting sunlight. So
Hmm.
that can be challenging depending where you live. Especially if you're in a place where it gets cold in the winter. Getting sunlight. But what we don't realize is, I'm currently in Vermont and I'm looking outside and it's cold and snowy, but the sun is still shining because it's light out. So even though I
Hmm.
don't see the sun and it's mostly white, you can still benefit from going outside and getting fresh air and getting the sunlight and getting that on a regular basis is something that's super, super important. So, if you think about it in the winter, people get sick
Hmm.
because they're inside more, just
Yeah, they get
naturally.
depressed. Yeah,
People in the
totally.
summertime, they're outside, they're walking around more, even eating meals outside. People are just outside way more getting sunlight. And the reason people get sick in the winter is because their immune systems go down. They're not getting as much vitamin D. They're not
Hmm.
getting as much fresh air to kind of clear out their whole system. So getting fresh air and sunlight is another thing that's
Yeah.
super, super important. that's
That's
often
a big one
overlooked.
for me, totally. Like if I can
What's
just
that?
get
Sorry.
out, that's a big one for me. Just
Yeah.
getting outside, getting some sunlight, getting some movement, like getting in grass, like almost like running around, almost like a kid. It makes me feel so much better. With
Yep.
uh with people building habits, people might try and do it for a couple days. How long do you think it takes for the habit to become a habit or their routine? It might go vice versa. Is it a habit to a routine or a routine to a habit? But how long do you believe it takes for it to become part of their life?
Ooh, I think that's a tough one because I think it definitely depends on the person. For me, I can form a habit relatively quickly. So I know for me, like for example, if I'm on vacation somewhere and let's just say I'm staying at a certain hotel or an Airbnb for say 5 days,
Hmm.
I tend to find my favorite coffee shop, and I maybe it's a 10-minute walk away, and by day three, of walking to that coffee shop every morning, it kind of feels like a habit.
Yeah,
And then
totally.
day four, I kind of feel like, okay, I need to walk to my favorite coffee shop
Yeah.
again, to
Yeah.
get that cup of coffee. So I think it depends on the person and a little bit about their personality type. And then also the level of the habit, I guess. Is it a difficult thing? Is it outside of the ordinary? But for certain people, you can pick up a habit doing it, a couple days in a row. It's
Yeah.
actually pretty quick to pick up habits if you're in the mindset of, hey, this is a good thing for me and I enjoy, or this is something I enjoy doing.
Hmm. Yeah, totally. I mean, I love the idea of walking to a coffee shop. I feel like that's me and my wife on vacation. She's usually still in bed. I'm like walking to the nearest coffee shop,
Yeah.
bring back coffee, and I end up doing it the next day and the next day
And then
and the
she
next
gets in
day.
the routine of
Yeah.
getting coffee in bed every morning.
Every
Great.
morning. Yeah, totally. With with everybody coming up on New Year's Eve. You mentioned some stat before we started recording, but I think it's important to kind of go back to that and talk about with people trying to start something and how many people fail, and then
Yep.
how these habits could really help people have a higher success rate in things they're trying to achieve.
Yeah, so the stat was something like 80% of New Year's resolutions fail within the first 6 weeks of the new
Hmm.
year. So by mid-February, by Valentine's Day, most people, the majority of people that made New Year's resolutions have completely fallen off the bandwagon. They're no longer doing their New Year's resolution. And that kind of blew my mind a little bit when I read that stat because, you hear about people making New Year's resolutions all the time. And I figured most of them do fail, but I didn't realize it was that high.
Hmm.
Because you occasionally hear about some people who have some good success, whatever it might be. But
You
yeah,
usually hear
it's
about the people that have success, not fail.
exactly, because a lot of people are maybe afraid to admit it.
Yep.
And so I think in more recent years, more and more, I feel like, I don't know about you, but for me, I feel like less and less people talk about their New Year's resolutions anymore. Maybe that was more of a thing in our childhood, but I feel like I hear less people talk about it now, maybe because they're embarrassed that they didn't stick to it.
Hmm. With
Um,
it's interesting because it goes along. I don't know if you thought about this too, but that's a 6 week period that people fail on their New Year's resolutions. You're putting together a program that is about 6 weeks long for
yep.
people to transform their life around healthy habits. And I don't want to give the secrets away and too many people like get into your program, but in a sense, how is your program designed? So if somebody was, I know you're going to release it here in a few weeks. Like if somebody was able to hop into your program, what are some things they could expect?
Yeah, great question. So basically, the idea is to take that 6 weeks instead of, I guess, wasting those 6 weeks on a New Year's resolution that you're not going to follow through with.
Hmm.
Before you even get into that, I want to help people build that foundation. And so I'm not trying to be a nutritionist. I'm not trying to be a personal trainer. I'm trying to help people get in the right mindset before they go join a gym membership, before they go meet with a nutritionist, before they sign up for their, whatever challenge they might have at work. So I want to help people build that foundation to get mentally ready so that when they do start going to the gym or join that challenge with their coworkers or whatever it might be, they can crush it and be successful because they
Hmm.
already have those foundational habits. They're already walking daily, they're already getting sunshine daily, they're already, cutting out sugars and sodas and all those things. And so I want to help people do all of that in that 6 week time frame. So basically the general structure of the program is each week there's going to be a new habit, basically a new habit that is implemented. and then it's going to compound every single week. So
Hmm.
every week we're going to introduce something new, and then there's a big community aspect. So we're all in this together. A big part of forming new habits is having people help keep you accountable. So
Yeah,
if
totally.
it's your friends, your family, your loved ones, your followers on social media, whatever it might be, all of those people working together, we can all help keep each other accountable to say, hey, we're all going to do this together.
Hmm.
And so that's kind of the approach, is to be able to kind of build upon things and then all hold each other accountable.
Yep. For people too, I do think there's not. I know you said you're not a nutritionist, but I think you know a good bit about nutrition and maybe some things that people could do because I still find it mind blowing that so many people are so uneducated when it comes to things they
Yeah.
should and shouldn't be eating. For you, what have you found that works for yourself and maybe to like things that you found when you are working with individuals that they can pick up on quickly?
Yeah, I think for me, it's pretty simple. There's obviously a lot of debate, especially heated topics on social media about different diets and what's trendy right now and what was trendy and all these. There's so many different debates, and people get very fired up and heated about it. But I think the one thing that a lot of people can agree on, despite whatever your dietary preferences are,
Hmm.
is we all kind of know we probably shouldn't be eating chemicals. We probably shouldn't be eating things that are ultra processed, that are made in factories, things that we don't have long-term test results on. The human race has evolved over thousands and thousands of years, and it's only up until the last, century where we've been eating chemicals and things that were made in factories and all of that. So, you know, our species has evolved pretty incredibly eating things that were either sourced from the earth, whether it's
Hmm.
lots of fruits and vegetables or animals, meats, fish, all those things. It's the circle of life. So if you think about it in a more natural way, if you eat the things on how our species evolved, you're probably going to be a much healthier person versus if you're eating something that was recently introduced, recently in the last, say 50, 70 years in a factory. That long-term effects might destroy the human race. We don't know.
Yeah, totally. It's crazy to think about, but no, I mean, I think that's a great tip. And if you just think about natural foods, if it was from the ground or the earth or an animal product, you know, you're more than likely going to be in good shape. Is you
Yeah. And
Do you incorporate a lot of fruit into your diet?
I do. Yeah, I eat fruit pretty regularly. And one quick thing on I know you said the word natural. I recently learned this, and I'm surprised I didn't learn this sooner, but the word natural is actually not even regulated by the FDA. So that's
Really?
another thing to
They
kind
just
of be
throw it out
careful
there.
for. So if you're walking through the grocery store and you see a box of crackers that says like natural whole grains or something, that basically doesn't mean anything. Or natural flavors. That's a big one now, especially in the supplement world, where some supplement brands are getting, in trouble because they're saying natural flavors, but that word natural is not even regulated. So that's one thing where things get really confusing
Interesting.
because the FDA is not regulating the word natural. So, I try to look at maybe a good way to describe it is like single ingredient foods.
Hmm.
If you're looking at a grocery store, things around the outer aisle tend to be the healthier options for the most
Yep.
part. You've got your produce section, you've got your meat and seafood, usually along a wall. Maybe you've got some dairy, which dairy all comes from animals as well. And then everything in the middle is like pretty much just packaged
It is.
garbage.
That's the only way it can stay on
Um,
the shelf. It's packaged and saran wrapped and, whatever sealed. So it's airtight,
Yeah,
uh,
exactly. And
tons
there's
of,
some stuff out there that's not that bad. It's getting better. There's some healthier snack options that are available on the go, and some of that stuff is getting better, but I would say 90% of it is still garbage and it's safe to avoid.
yep. With this, and I think you and my wife could go down the rabbit hole about this with seed oils, but for somebody that might not know what we're talking about, uh, you know, maybe maybe describe what the issue is, and what are some good oils to look for, and then what are the, all the other seed oils that they're throwing out there that hopefully to avoid.
Yeah, so seed oils are kind of a controversial topic right now. Especially with RFK Jr.'s coming into a position where he's talking about wanting to educate the American people on seed oil. So it's a controversial topic right now, and it's getting a very heated debate, especially on social media. seed oils originally were basically why seed oils are dangerous is because they're to simplify it, they're basically heated at very, very high temperatures that make them very dangerous and toxic for your stomach, and your stomach can't process it and
Hmm.
digest it. So that's kind of a simplified view of seed oils. You can get super in depth in, the sciencey podcasts and all that, but basically seed oils can be really harmful to your digestion and can do things like cause cancer and a whole slew of other things. And so those have become very, very dangerous. And unfortunately, things like canola oil, sunflower oil, safflower oil, those are kind of the three most common ones you see. Those are found in almost every single condiment, dressings, sauces, marinades, all those things, super high in seed oils. And so that becomes really tough when you're trying to avoid those things because you go
Hmm.
through the grocery store and you look at almost all those products have it in it. Or any kind of like chips, tortilla chips,
They
potato
all have
chips,
it.
all those things are all fried in seed oils. And so it becomes really tough when that's become such a prominent thing in our culture. And
Hmm.
it becomes very hard to avoid those things. And so the easiest way to avoid those things is to not eat packaged foods, not eat processed foods.
Sure.
If you're buying fruits and vegetables and you're buying meats and fish and rice and potatoes, just kind of in the raw form, you don't have to cook it in those things. And you have the most control of what you eat if you're cooking it yourself.
Yep.
So, in terms of things to avoid, basically, canola oil is a big one. Sunflower, safflower oil. There's a bunch of others, grapeseed oil. But those are the ones you see a lot. Um, in terms of things that are okay, avocado oil is okay. Avocado oil has a high smoke point, which means you can cook with it a little bit easier. Um, Olive oil is a good one, but the caveat with olive oil is it actually doesn't have a very high smoke point.
Hmm.
So olive oil is actually probably not very good to cook with, but if you want to just use it as a salad dressing and eat it, at
Sure.
room temperature on your salad, it's perfect for that. And then things like coconut oil has become a little bit more popular. That's pretty good to cook with as well. It's actually great if you cook eggs in it. And then things that come from animal fats. So instead of oil, use something like butter or ghee, which is basically a clarified butter, or beef tallow, which is like a clarified beef fat.
Hmm.
So any kind of animal fats are pretty good to cook with as well. Because if you think about it, it's just part of the animal as well, kind of in a rendered form. So those are the things that I like to cook with. Personally, I like cooking in butter a lot. I think just things taste better in butter.
Yeah, totally.
But that's where you have to be careful as well, because if you go to the grocery store and look at anything in like a tub, it's going to be butter mixed with canola oil or butter
Yeah.
mixed with one of these other oils. And that's where it
Hmm.
gets a little tricky. And so everything you learn, you have to kind of be very careful and thoughtful and look at the back and look at the ingredients list.
Yep.
Um,
No,
yeah,
those are
I
great
could go on a
points.
whole
And
tangent for a while about seed oils, but
no, it's
I
great.
get fired up about it.
I think it's just important for people to try and recognize and look at the labels more and just
Yeah.
realize if you're at home, do not be cooking with any of these oils, right?
Yeah.
You have
And
that choice.
we've been trained, our generation especially, we've been trained to look at, nutrition facts. And I think now the better thing to look at is the ingredients list over
Hmm.
nutrition facts because we've been trained fat is bad and all these things.
Yep.
But now there's more research studies coming out showing, okay, healthier fats are good. I think a lot of people
Hmm.
realize, oh, avocados are healthy fats. So like I should eat
Yeah,
avocados with my eggs or whatever. And so I think it's more important to look at the ingredients list over the nutrition facts because
that's a
that
great
tells you
point.
more about what's in the food.
Yep. No, that's a great point. And doesn't isn't extra virgin olive oil, isn't that a fat as well? What?
Yeah, all oil is definitely a fat as well, but it's considered a healthy fat. So the
Yep.
omega 3s that you need and all that are in olive oil. But again, um, I don't know the specific science behind it, but something to do with the chemical properties in olive oil can change when heated. It can actually be disruptive to your gut and your digestion as well. So
Got
it
it.
actually can be detrimental if you heat it. So that's again, it gets confusing because you start learning, oh, how do I be healthy? There's all this science out there. It gets really confusing. So it's good to just kind of continually learn and expand your
Yeah,
knowledge.
totally. I know like sometimes I'll throw if I'm eating a chicken breast, I'll put a little olive oil on it to like add a little fat to my diet, so it's more of a
Yep.
balanced meal in a sense. With you mentioned something exciting to me a few weeks ago, is you're gonna host some trips for Mantis and Surf Yoga Beer.
Yeah, I know you
Um,
just chatted with Mantis recently on a previous episode. Very
yeah, dude. I
exciting.
mean, I'm jealous. You're gonna be hosting, a team leader on one of his trips.
Yeah.
Do you know when that trip's coming up? And like, tell me about the process and how excited you are to tell people. People can come with you. I don't know where you're going and where you're hosting the trip, but it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's exciting. So, yeah, Mantis and I connected. I went to one of his trips and, for those listening, Mantis runs a company called Surf Yoga Beer, which is really focused on, basically taking these trips focused on fitness and making new friends and community. And even if you don't drink beer, that's totally fine. I don't drink beer personally. I already talked about my tequila instead of beer, but yeah, I think it's really exciting. I went on one of his trips this past summer. I went to Croatia and I got to meet him, and him and I
Nice.
vibed right off the bat. We actually figured out our birthdays are less than 24 hours apart, same year. So in November, we actually celebrated our birthdays together back to back in Nicaragua, which was really fun.
Hell yeah.
So yeah, I went down there for a leadership training, and I'm super pumped to be hosting some trips in 2025. So I'm going back to Nicaragua in March, and then hopefully a few others as well. But I'll be there for a few weeks in March, which is really cool. And what's great is being able to meet all these like-minded people who put fitness forward, but also like to let loose a little bit and have fun and,
Mhm.
have that sort of healthy balance. But, start your day with movement and yoga and getting sunshine, a lot of those healthy habits that we talked about.
Yep.
But then also, live a little bit, let loose, make new friends, crack a
No, it's
beer
pretty
or
cool.
tequila electrolytes is my go-to. But yeah, I like to have a little bit of a balance too. So I kind of like to have a more realistic approach.
Very cool. Well, I know you're up there visiting your parents, and this has been a great conversation, and I hope you all have a wonderful Merry Christmas. But before we close up shop here, where can people find you and give them a little bit more information about I know your program's going to be coming out in the new year, sometime in January probably. But how can they find that? Sign up for the wait list, that sort of thing.
Yeah, everything's on my Instagram. That's kind of my primary form. So I'm Healthy Habit Guy on Instagram. I was surprised that handle wasn't already taken. So, it's mine now. But yeah, Healthy Habit Guy on Instagram is where you can find me. I try to put everything out on there. I have a link in my bio where you can sign up for the Healthy Habit program. I'm super pumped to be launching it really, really soon. Hopefully shortly after this airs. Going to be pumped to kind of launch that and kind of start helping people out in a more official capacity. So,
No, I love it.
really appreciate your time. This has been super fun and look forward to staying in touch.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, you're a wealth of knowledge on a lot of these topics. And I think it's important for people to hear over and over again. And especially around the new year when this episode is going to be dropping and people are going to be trying to get their habits in order, get their routines in order, get, those exercise nutrition challenges going. So hopefully this could be a good resource for them to, get that little kick in the butt to really be a success and not part of that 80% that fails. So Dan,
Yeah.
it's been an absolute pleasure. I hope you and your family have a wonderful Christmas, and I'm sure we'll connect and talk more. But it's been great having you on.
Yeah. Thanks so much for having me. Really appreciate it. This has been fun. Take
Awesome.
care, Sam. Happy holidays.